Everyone. Welcome, welcome. Really excited to have you on our session today. It's our office hours with former MBA AdComs and admissions experts. We have a really great session lined up for you. We've started doing these through our event weeks, and I think they're just incredible sessions. This is an opportunity to have your questions answered live in real time by some of our top coaches on the platform. So as a quick reminder, you've seen the QR code if this is not your first session with us. If it is, welcome. But that QR code, you can sign up for a Leland account and access the recordings for our MBA week. We have a great session in store, and we have incredible sessions lined up for throughout the rest of the week as well. So make sure you sign up for a Leland account. Diving into our agenda, it's pretty straightforward. It is an office hours, so we're going to do a quick welcome and intro. We'll get to hear a little bit about our panelists today and their experience before we dive into the open questions. And then we'll wrap up with a final word before we send you on your way to our next session of the day. So diving into welcome and intros, also want to flag, you'll start seeing Elise in the chat sending in the QR code and link to be able to start sending in your questions. But welcome. I'm Amanda, help with events here at Leland. You'll see Elise, as I mentioned in the chat, as Leland Events. I'm sending important resources, helpful information that you may need during your time today on the call with us. You may also see Erica as well, who helps with experience. Really excited to put on fun events and fun event weeks like this one to really engage with you and get an opportunity to present some of our incredible coaches on the platform. So for the people that you're actually here for and excited to hear from, we'll go ahead and pass it over to you, Faisal, if you want to do a quick intro. We'd love to hear a bit more about you.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. Appreciate it. Good to be on here. It's really encouraging to see this number of participants. So my name is Faisal Khan, and I've been doing MBA consulting for about 17 years now. I went to Booth myself, was a former consultant, and helped with the admissions process while at Booth as well. So very familiar with what goes on behind the scenes. It's been an incredibly fulfilling journey these last couple of years, helping others tell their stories, and I'm excited to be part of this panel.
We're so lucky to have you. Let's keep it rolling. Avi?
Everybody, Avi here. Good to be with you all. Started my career in the test prep side, doing GMAT and GRE prep, and then quickly transitioned to the admissions consulting side because I'm a former writer. I was a reporter for the LA Times and then transitioned into education. I love working with clients because, just having people really struggle with this process that can be understood through coaching. And it's a fulfilling thing for me, so I enjoy doing it.
Absolutely. Love to have you on the call today. Emily, last but certainly not least, round us out.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Lammers. I am a Haas MBA 2015. I am fresh off of helping organize my 10th reunion last month, which was super fun. While I was there, I was kind of the student lead for the Admissions Committee, so working closely with them on a variety of initiatives. Most of my experience is in asset management, product marketing, product management, kind of anything storytelling in the finance industry. So actually telling stories about clients and their lives is like 10 times more interesting than investment products. And I have been coaching basically since I graduated, so almost 10 years now. And I recently transitioned to become a full-time coach. So enjoying all my work now and excited to work with many clients this cycle. Thank you.
We love to hear it. Y'all, I have been on so many events, and these are some of my absolute favorite MBA coaches. I'm so excited to dive in and get to hear from each of them on the session today. But before we dive into the panel questions, I already see that we have some questions coming in. Would love to hear what's one thing you've learned so far during MBA week. This is our fifth session, sixth session. We have so many in store. We've gotten to know a bit about you, where you're calling in from, but would love to hear in the chat, what's one thing you've learned so far? Get us a chance to learn from you a bit more. I feel like we rarely have letters of recommendation sessions, and we actually just wrapped up one. So that was really, really exciting to hear from a coach there. I will give it a second for everyone to, oh, there we go. They're starting to trickle in. Oh, wow. How much support Leland offers. Love to hear stuff like that. You shouldn't pick a recommender just based on their impressive title. Absolutely, Adam. Yeah, it looks like letters of recommendations have been a great topic. As we dive into questions, if you have any follow-ups or would like a different perspective, our three coaches will be here to answer some follow-ups as well. Love it. Keep those coming in. We want to hear a bit more about you and how we can continue to provide top-tier insight. So let's go ahead. Really quick, one last reminder. You've seen this slide before. We're helping thousands of people on Leland. As Jalissa mentioned a minute ago, how much support we offer. During this session or even following, you can book one-on-one personalized coaching time with any of the panelists that you're seeing on any of these calls. With three of our panelists today, they're absolutely incredible and can help whether you're thinking comprehensive, beginning to end, every moment of every step support, or later on as you've maybe secured interviews for certain MBA programs and are looking for a little bit more specific tailored advice for an area or component of the application process. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. I see we have a lot of questions. As a reminder, you can scan this QR code. Elise will send the link in the chat one more time for you to go ahead and start entering in questions. But we've already gathered a couple of the frequently asked questions that we've been receiving over the sessions so far this week. So I'd really like to start off with those as questions continue to filter in. So we'll start off with the first one, applying for different rounds. There's round 1, round 2, round 3. Applying across, does it really matter? Would love to start with you, Emily, and then we'll go Avi and Faisal and hear your thoughts there.
Sure. So it doesn't matter unless it's round 3. I would say you shouldn't be applying round 3 unless you've had some kind of unusual circumstances, which then you need to explain. And that does happen every once in a while. So but if you're engaging with us now, hopefully you're planning on round 1 or round 2. I think every admissions committee person out there will tell you it doesn't matter. And I agree with that about 95%. So bottom line is you should always apply when you can put together the best package. So you don't want to be rushing around like three weeks before the deadline, slapping something together. Because then you've kind of taken your shot and then you have to wait until the next cycle. You can't like apply in a later round. So you want to make sure you've put your best foot forward, regardless of what round that is. The 4% or 5% where I might disagree that round 1, round 2 might matter is if you're coming from one of the really big buckets, like the oversubscribed demographics, we call them in fancy language. So if you're like a white male in finance or an Indian product software engineer, some of these really big groups that are applying, I think it couldn't hurt to be round 1 if you are able to put together a strong application. I just think they're looking at so many of those people, and it's a good look to show you're organized and, committed to the process, ready to get in there and get that first look. I think maybe one other thing I might mention is scholarships could potentially be a factor for applying earlier. There's not a lot of good data there, but there is only so much scholarship money. And again, couldn't hurt to be early in the rounds if you are ready to put forth your best foot. Put your best foot forward.
Avi, would love to hear from you next, and then Bess will round out with you.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Emily said. One thing that you want to consider also is, having come from both the test prep side and the admission side, if you haven't locked up a good GMAT or GRE score over the summer, and it's still something that you need to address, that's one reason why I, from time to time, will recommend that clients defer to round 2, because it's difficult to do both at one time. It happens, but if you're really struggling with the GMAT or GRE and you figure you just could use an extra couple of months to just have that alone on your plate, that's one reason why you might want to defer to round 2. The other thing is to be honest with your schedule at work. If you're completely slammed in the summer, and that's just the way it is with the nature of your work, or it happens to be this year, then you also might want to consider deferring to round 2. And lastly, if you have an upcoming project that is significant or deeply meaningful or will highlight an aspect of you and your development professionally that your application currently lacks, and that you want some, and you're going to have some, in other words, it's starting in the summer or so, and then around November, you'll have 3 or 4 months in the project to talk about it. You might also want to defer to round 2 applications if it'll add some depth and complexion to your application.
Absolutely. Think about your scores. Think about the whole entirety of your essay or essays and application components. Faisal, would love to round out with you. I also know that you do a lot of work in terms of scholarship, so would love to hear if you have a unique perspective, keeping that in mind. Emily, thank you for bringing that point up.
Yeah, no, thank you. So part of the reason I love being on these panels is I always learn from my peers. So Avi, Emily, that's just really, really good points you raised. The one incremental thing I'll also throw out there is think about your strategy. You'll find that as you start writing your applications, your first application won't be as strong as your last one. And that's just natural because you're chipping away, you're refining your story. And so it's okay to straddle rounds too and strategically think about a dream school, perhaps. Maybe you're not putting that in round 1. And if you have the luxury, maybe you have a target school, a safety school in round 1, and your dream school, the one that you really want to polish, you save to round 2. Not saying that's going to be the right approach for everyone, but think about it because it may take you time to network, attend sessions on campus, and you'll find as you keep writing that that last submission you make is going to be your strongest. So just be honest with yourselves as you're pulling that together. And so, and Amanda, you asked about scholarship. So Emily answered a little bit of that already, where there's a pool of money and the schools will continue to allocate it over the course of the rounds. That doesn't mean that they'll allocate all the scholarship money in round 1. They make sure to save it across the peanut butter, spread it across the rounds. But it's also going to depend a little on the competitive application pool and who else is applying. You really can't game that system. So if you're aiming for scholarships or need scholarships, it goes back to just submit when you're ready, because that's what's going to help you stand out the most and increase your chances of getting scholarship. There's no secret, I must apply in round 1 to get scholarship money.
Love it. Absolutely. Thank you all three for your perspective.
Amanda, could I just jump in with a really quick point too?
Absolutely.
So when we're talking round 1 and round 2, this is full-time only. I'm sure most of the applicants on here are interested in that, but I do work with a lot of clients, because I have a Haas background. Haas has a great part-time program. There are other top schools who have part-time or executive programs where rounds don't matter so much for a variety of reasons, but that I don't think that's something that's well known. So full-time only for the round 1, round 2, round 3 discussion.
Absolutely. Great.
One more
Great.
thing, Amanda.
Mhm.
Just to provide a little bit of context on what Emily was talking about earlier, which is so remember what's the school's objective? They're trying to create a very diverse class. Everybody hears that term, diversity. In round 1, they're starting from 0. Okay, so the people like Emily was talking about, if you're going to come in from an overrepresented group, which is Indian engineers, East Asian applicants, white dudes in finance or IB, there's nobody there in round 1. So they have the luxury of admitting more of those people because they can compensate for it later if they need to, if there's too much of those. If of that demographic, they can compensate for it later. So overrepresented, usually advised to apply round 1, and that's why.
Love it. We will come back to some of our other frequently asked questions. I do believe we're already seeing them appear in our lineup of questions that are being sent in. As a reminder, scan the QR code, submit your questions here, and you can also upvote questions that you want to hear covered the most. So I'm going to go ahead and turn to some of these questions because we have them coming in now. Would love to throw out a question on reapplying. If there are any general pieces of advice for students that are reapplying. We have a lot of people currently with us who have have gone through the process, have been through the wait list situation, and have ultimately been rejected and are looking to start again throughout this application process. Emily would love to start with you, and then we'll go Avi, Faisal, to hear your thoughts on reapplication.
Sure. So I think the first thing that comes to mind with reapplicants is it's not a bad thing. I didn't understand that before I became a coach. I thought, you've been dinged. You kind of have this like scarlet letter. No, actually, reapplying is generally viewed as a pretty positive thing from a AdComs perspective. It shows you really want this. You're committed. You're trying to improve yourself. And you're really committed to this school. So obviously they love to see that. So, any anxiousness you have over being a reapplicant, like just don't spend energy on that because that's a good thing. Number two, I would say to be a strong reapplicant, you need to have shown how you've improved your candidacy. So a lot of people, if they didn't get in, call it round 2 of this past cycle, they want to reapply right away. Round 1, like anxious, want to give it another go. I advise most of my reapplicants to, as painful as it is, kind of drag it out maybe a little bit longer. The more time you have before you reapply, the more time you have to improve your candidacy, whether that's improving your test scores, which is a big hurdle for a lot of people, getting more work experience, leadership opportunities, maybe you're light on extracurriculars, you can start kind of cultivating some of those on the side and showing how you'll be involved at the program. So, part of the exercise too is figuring out like, how do you improve? So that's something that coaches are great at helping with. But yeah, I would say think positively about your reapplicant status. It's a positive. Give yourself enough time to improve, and then strategically pick some things where you have the opportunity to really show improvement and tell the admissions committee about it.
Love it. Absolutely. Make sure you're demonstrating growth. Avi, do you have any follow-up thoughts here?
Not many, just I'll address the reapplicants that are going to apply the following cycle. They applied, 2025, they didn't get in, they want to reapply 2026. And then it begs the question, well, how much can possibly change in a few months? In some cases, a lot, okay? In some cases, major significant developments at work, test scores like Emily talked about, and in some cases, not much. So when not much has changed, can you still reapply successfully the following cycle? Yes, and here's how to approach it. Your application didn't work, you didn't get accepted, but it's important to remember who gets accepted. So who gets accepted to let's just take the top schools as examples, the top M7, the big name schools, the fancy, Harvard, Stanford, and all those schools. Who gets accepted? Highly qualified, highly accomplished, impressive applicants. Who gets rejected? Highly qualified, highly accomplished, impressive applicants. And it's important to remember that just because you got rejected does not mean that you weren't qualified to attend that school. Could mean a variety of different things. Maybe they were just overloaded with your type of demographic or industry or whatever. Now that's beyond your control. What's within your control is how to brand the application. So I had an applicant a couple of years ago that got rejected from Wharton and came to me, and I read the essays, and the essays were very nuts and bolts, career driven, and essays, kind of, very meat and potatoes. Here's what I've done, and here's how it shaped my development, etc. And so in digging a little bit deeper, what we did is rebranded the essays a little bit more towards personality, values, personal interest, passions, and it showed a different dimension of the applicant. And so it branded it a little bit differently. So the career stuff was still there, but it positioned it a little bit differently in terms of passions, values, interests, what motivated their accomplishments rather than the accomplishments themselves, which any good essay and application should do. But when you evaluate an application, sometimes it tilts in one direction or the other. And if you want to apply as a reapplicant, you could tilt it in the other direction, and sometimes that's successful. Not always, but if you're going to apply immediately the following cycle and nothing major has happened, you might want to just rebrand it either towards career or towards, values, mission, passion, etc.
Love it. Absolutely. And I think Emily touched on it and Avi as well. Like if you've been through the process before and you were trying to do it by yourself, it's a really difficult and really lengthy process. If I have learned anything from this weekend and from events and talking with our coaches and they're here to support you, right? Another eye or another look at your application will never hurt the application. It'll always be a different perspective of someone who knows exactly what to look for and to pull out. And that's what our coaches are here for. So a great reminder there. Want to keep cooking through some questions. So Vessel, I'm going to direct this next one to you. So our upvoted question we have here is, what advice do you have for the introspection phase of the application process? How can attendees on the call really hone in on the thread that pulls all the different parts of the application together?
Oh, wow. Yeah, give me the hard question. Um, Introspection. You answered that question with more introspection. This is why you have to start early. The way I think about it is there's 5 whys that you have to answer in your MBA application. Why you, why now, why short-term goal, why long-term goal, and why that school. And those answers aren't always easy. So you really have to get to a point where you feel you can credibly, with evidence, answer each of those whys. And that takes time. So, and everyone has it. It's just a matter of really digging deep. And maybe you're a consultant wanting to move out of consulting. Why? What is it that you want to do in the short term? Why? What do you want to accomplish in the long term? Why? Right? Just be very critical, and be honest with yourself. The MBA application process is unlike any other graduate school admissions program, and it really forces you to be insightful. Heck, some of these schools will ask questions that you're like, why does that matter for business school? Stanford will ask you, what matters most to you and why? Well, how's that relevant to business school? It is, because they really want to admit individuals who have thought deeply about where they've come from and where they want to go and how an MBA from that specific business school is going to help them get there. So if you just spend time mulling these questions over and really being your worst critic, you're going to come up with that thread that you can then begin to pull.
Absolutely love it. Avi or Emily, do you have any follow-ups here?
I don't.
Perfect. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. We're looking through here. This is a great question. Avi, we'll direct this one to you. How do you recommend allocating time to each element of the application? There are so many. What's the ideal, ratio of time spent on each component? Would love to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to sound sort of like a self-serving answer, but get a coach. It's a, it's this is, like Faisal said, it's hard to put together a strong application. It really is. I mean, these are very sophisticated people who are evaluating the applications. They know exactly what they're looking for. And they are, it's a cliche, but they are your friend. They do want to admit you. They simply don't have enough seats in the restaurant, right, to accommodate everybody. And so they have to turn some people away. But in order to put it together, it goes back to what Faisal said. I mean, this has to be a deeply, deeply thoughtful, insightful application that cuts across a lot of different dimensions of who you are. Career objective, personal passions and aspirations, self-awareness, understanding of what your soft skills are and what soft skills you lack, your technical abilities and technical skills that you want to develop, what that particular school's, not what MBA programs in general, but what that particular school provides you that is in service of however way you want to develop for your career, your understanding of your career and the landscape around it. And then, of course, all of the elements that go into into the application, into telling that story, the essays, the short answer questions in the portal, the letters of recommendation, rebranding your resume for the MBA, the interview, all of that stuff. How much time to devote to it? I can't answer that. I mean, I have maybe Emily and Faisal can answer it better. The only way I can answer it is I've never done it myself, because when I applied for an MBA, 20 plus years ago, I did it myself because the industry just wasn't around, you know, 25 years ago or so. It just wasn't around. This industry just didn't exist at the time, and now it does. So my only experience is having been a coach working with clients to project manage their timelines and milestones, and developing phases of their drafts, of their essays, et cetera, et cetera. It's a months-long process at minimum. So, but yeah, maybe Emily and Faisal can get a more concrete answer.
Yeah, Emily? So you're unmuted.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with the months long process for sure. I know that the question was about allocating. So I guess if I was thinking about how to, what percentage of effort goes where, I think your story and your essays, in my mind, is probably like 70%. But in that 70%, I am lumping the introspection that we've already talked about, the thinking about all your life experiences and your values and what was important to you, your career research. People have not, for the most part, have not put in enough thought about what they want to do with their career post MBA, not just generally, but looking at job descriptions and having informational interviews with people in that role and thinking about what skills they need. Like, this is, it's not the deep introspection, but the personal things that you find on like what matters most to you and why prompts. But this career narrative is part of your, like, a linchpin of your whole story, and you're going to end up telling it in every single application in some form and every single interview. So the research on yourself and your career and the schools, I'm all lumping in the 70% of storytelling and essays. And if you spend enough time upfront on all of this research and thinking and mapping out, kind of your roadmap for your career and some high level themes for your personality, the essay writing actually takes a lot less time. I mean, you're still going to be agonizing over drafts and language and which anecdote to tell, but you've done a lot of the hard work. So that is a multi-month process. But I would just know that you kind of think about, like, this is all encompassing. The actual essays themselves are just a part of that. And then it's the other 30% in my mind is kind of more tactical. Like, you can kind of, the letter of recommendation prep packets, like the resume, the interview prep. Yes, those all relate to your story and kind of your overall strategy, but you can just kind of knock them out a little bit quicker, and they're not going to be taking up the vast majority of your time.
Yeah, and the only other thing I'd add, Avi and Emily did a really nice job helping you all understand how much time when to start. But one example I give often to my clients is, imagine you're getting a part-time job, right? And at its peak, you're probably going to be devoting that much time. It's not unusual during crunch time to hit 20 hours a week, week after week, where you're just working on your application, everything that Avi and Emily laid out that has to get done. It takes a lot of time. So the sooner you start, the less likelihood you will be hit with just this crunch time where you're just not putting your best product forward.
Love it. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you all so much. We're going to keep cooking through questions because we have about 20 minutes left. So, Avi, I'll direct this one to you. Getting a lot of questions about career gaps. There are, how do you go about addressing career gaps in your overall application? What are some ways that people could fill, gaps of their, I guess, in their application? How could people fill in those holes there or explain those best.
Do you mean existing ones or upcoming ones or?
So we're actually getting a mix, which is kind of where I had a moment there. Would love to hear maybe your thoughts on how to address previous gaps and as you look forward, or those that are potentially thinking about taking a gap of time off, whether that's with school or work before applying.
Yeah. A lot of people in consulting do internships and not internships, externships. I mean, but that's sort of, not really time off. Any career gaps that you have that's existing, past career gaps, needs to be branded in some way for personal development. And if it wasn't, it needs to be thought about in some way because every life experience, whether it's, spending 3 months doing nothing except, I don't know, reading books or whatever, it does develop you in some way. So, don't focus on the experience itself, but rather, how did it develop some dimension or aspect of you that is not showcased in your professional life? So it should showcase something different than is showcased in your professional life. Okay. So any career gaps that you have, obviously, you can use the optional essay for them, but should be able to highlight some aspect of yourself that isn't demonstrated in your professional life.
Love it. Vessel, Emily, any follow-ups there? I know I kind of threw a lot out on the table there.
Not for me.
I just be super basic and say, make sure you answer it one way or another. I think, a lot of these gaps sometimes are not chosen by the applicant. Things happen in life. And some people have a lot of anxiety about that or just kind of want to sweep it under the rug. That's the worst thing you can do. You don't want to raise any questions. So whatever your answer it is, what you were doing or how you were developing yourself, make sure you address it somehow.
Love it. All right, Avi, I'm going to direct this next question to you, but want to hear, honestly, the thoughts of all three of you, if they're differentiating perspectives. GMAT versus GRE. Which one should attendees take? Is one preferred over another? Avi, would love to start with you, and then maybe Vessel and Emily.
Yeah, I mean, the party line has always been that the GMAT is favored over the GRE, that there's a bias among admissions committees members that they favor the GMAT because the GRE is viewed as sort of the cupcake exam or the softball exam or whatever analogy you want to use, which is true. It is. It's a way easier test. I've tutored both. I've written questions for both. There's no, it's beyond debate that the GRE is an easier test than the GMAT. There is no debate around that. If you're wondering which test you should take, you could take a practice test on both. Generally speaking, and this is, a generalization, but it's generally true. Humanities, social science people typically tend to take the GRE, and natural hard science majors, finance engineers, math, physics types tend to take the GMAT. All the AdComs that I've spoken to unanimously and uniformly say that there is no preference. I don't believe that. I do believe that if you are in the natural sciences or an engineer or in finance, and this is kind of off the record, but kind of colleagues that I've spoken to, they kind of expect you to take the GMAT. Unless you hit an absolute monster near perfect score on the GRE. But again, social science, humanities majors, they typically take the GRE, and there's no, unspoken, unofficial penalty behind the scenes that's assessed for that test.
Love it. Vessel, do you have any follow-up thoughts there?
Yeah, I'd say something that came up earlier in this discussion, just whichever test you decide to take, make sure as you're thinking about your application strategy, you bake in the opportunity to take that test again. So schools actually like to see the fact that a candidate has tried and attempted a test more than once, so that they're not just happy, unless you completely knock the ball out of the park. It's good to demonstrate that you're constantly looking to demonstrate your desire to improve. So that may also influence which round you select. But whichever test you select, just give yourself at least 2 takes mentally, if not more.
Love it. Emily, I'm gonna toss this next question to you because I actually know that you hold a waitlist workshop that I've enjoyed having you host. How do waitlists work, and are you considered for consecutive rounds if you strike out the round you apply in? Would love a little bit of insight into the waitlist process, generally speaking.
Oh, I wish it wasn't so opaque, or there was a consistent consistent answer for different schools. It really kind of depends. If you were dinged, you're not going to be considered for the wait list in that round. You're looking at reapplying. But a lot of schools will, if you apply round one, maybe they'll defer you to round two, and then maybe you get put on the wait list. So they're interested in you, but they're not quite ready to commit. So I think another thing with wait lists is I'd be curious what my other fellow coaches think, but like the use of wait lists seems to have really increased in recent years. There's been 2 years of like very high volume of applications. I think these schools are just being really choosy. They want to put together the absolute best class they can. So they're using wait lists a lot more as a tool to achieve their goals. And as far as how they work, from what I've seen, usually the first like waitlist movement is in the spring, like late April, early May. By that point in time, these schools have, they've let people in round one, they've let a bunch of people in round two, they've kind of seen who's coming, who's committed to the school, and then they can see how many spots they have left and start opening up the wait list. And then, so there's a lot of movement late spring. Then some of it gets dragged out into the summer too, as they're seeing like how many people of those new offers accept. We've all heard crazy stories about people being accepted or, offered admission like a week before school starts, which is absolutely insane, but it does happen. So it's kind of a waiting game. Like, how long do you want to stay on? A lot of people end up taking themselves off so that, they have a good option, or they're just not willing to deal with that kind of uncertainty. That's kind of generally how it works. Now, how it works from an applicant standpoint is, again, depends on the school. They all have very specific instructions. Some kind of invite you to engage with them. I would say some, in my mind, have a reputation of let's see how badly you want to come and demonstrate to us, like, how badly you want this, and you're definitely going to come here. Others they'll give you a chance for one update. So you need to kind of be strategic about what type of school you're dealing with, and also like what can you tell them that's new, like different things you've done at work, different ways you've built your skill set outside of work, community involvement. Sometimes it's just general love for the school. Engaging with more alums or current students, visiting campus, all sorts of things. But people are, like I said, tons of people are waitlisted every year, and a lot of people eventually get off. If you don't, you're in a great position to reapply. So.
Love it. Thank you. Yeah, I feel like that's something that you're so focused right now on round one and round two. And again, work with a coach that you can make sure your application's its absolute best place. So in a waitlist situation, you're like, dang, was there something I could have done, in my application looking back? But really appreciate the insight there as you think, past the initial submission for your application. Cooking through questions, Vessel, we'll pass this one over to you. We're getting a lot of questions about how to go about growth in your work experience. So some people, their company doesn't have a promotional structure, or there hasn't been a way to demonstrate growth in terms of title change, or people have been on the same team since they graduated. How do you recommend showing progression in your work experience in these situations when trying to convey that in your application?
Yeah, great question. So listen, progression can be shown many ways other than just title progression. You can point to your scope of responsibilities. Maybe they've changed over time. You can point to the impact that you've had, maybe as you've been in the same title, same position, you've had projects that have had more and more of an impact on your workplace. So there's very many ways of showing progression. Remember that admissions offices are looking to extract leadership attributes from everything that you submit, and title progression is one way to do it. But these are experts in their field. They know titles across industries, and they also know when someone may have when someone has title inflation, right? You work at a small company and you have a grand title, and you get awarded more titles at a startup. That's not going to carry the same weight. What matters more is the substance behind what you've done. So don't shy away from or don't be intimidated or disappointed by the fact that you don't have promotions under your belt. It's more important that you've had meaningful work experiences. And that goes back to something also I saw in the chat where there was a question earlier about when is too early to apply. If you haven't had enough work experience, it's too early to apply. If you've had less than 3 years, it's hard to imagine how you would have had enough experience under your belt to show that progression. Because that's what business schools want to see. They want to see that you've progressed in your career, but title is not just the only way to do that.
Love it. Avi, let's pass the next one to you. We have about 7 minutes left before we wrap up, so I want to try to get through some of these questions as quick as possible. How does someone make their voice shine through in their essays?
Oh, it just goes back to what both Emily and Faisal said, which is, dive deep into, who you are. And that's not easy, I mean, it doesn't matter how old you are, I mean, anytime you do a deep dive into who you are, you discover different things, and so kind of to capture your voice or to position your brand in a certain way. I just started talking. I totally forgot the question, Amanda. What was the question?
Completely fine. How to make your voice stand out in your
Oh, how to
essay.
make your voice stand out. Um, well, it's not to start talking like I did without thinking. Okay. So, do what Faisal said, which is do some deep dive, introspective activities, brainstorming, um, before you decide how you want to position yourself and brand your essays and present yourself. So, how do you want to present yourself to the admissions committee? How do you want to make your voice distinct? Well, you better know what makes you distinct. And how do you do that? Well, you need to reflect back on, we're moving so fast, right? Most people are moving fast enough in their lives not to really uh, it's hard to take stock as you're moving so fast in life. And so the business school applications are asking you to take stock of everything you've done, why you've done them, what's motivated it, what it's produced, how it's made you feel about your own aspirations. And these are deep questions. So how to make your voice distinct, really, really engage the process in a meaningful and committed and sincere way. Sincerity will carry the day on applications. There's no way to fake sincerity in life. There's no way to fake sincerity on the application. So you need to do a sincere, deep dive into who you are, what makes you tick, and it'll emerge slowly. Your voice and your distinctiveness will emerge through that process.
Love it. Thank you. Emily, going to move on to you. We're getting a lot of questions about undergraduate GPA. So, a lot of people applying to MBA, not deferred, but in a traditional cycle, they're many years outside of their collegiate experience. How important is undergraduate GPA in this application process? And what do you do if you had a low GPA?
This one is very personal to me because I had a very low GPA. So, and I do work with a lot of clients who have low GPAs. I mean, it is important, unfortunately. It's one of the like most tangible metrics they have on you other than your test scores. So I think it's good to be kind of aware of, like, you know, the schools you're applying to, what is the range of GPAs? That being said, GPAs, I mean, it's a number. The institutions are different. The majors are different. I was a biology major and took all these really hard courses that I didn't do that well in. Like, that's going to be viewed a little bit differently than like a low GPA in English or something, you know. But the bottom line is that the GPA is what it is. Like, be aware of what you have, but you can't change it, right? So focus on the things you can change. The biggest thing that you could do is get a great test score, especially if, you know, your GPA, you have lower marks in quant courses, or you don't have any quant courses at all. Like, that's a huge part of the application process in terms of, can this applicant handle the rigors of the curriculum? So, you know, try to get the best overall test score you can, especially on the quant section. You know, show kind of quantitative, rigorous, and analytical ability through your work and the examples you choose to talk about, what your recommenders choose to talk about. And then I think, you know, you just have to be that much better on all the other parts of the application. Like, for the right candidate, like one whose personality is just incredible, their experiences are incredible, they want to go to this school, they just shine in so many ways. Schools are willing to overlook all sorts of things. So I would say focus on what you can control, and just, you know, try to knock everything else out of the park.
Love it. As we wrap up, I know there are so many more questions, and hopefully, as I'm looking through a lot of these, we'll cover these in upcoming sessions. As a reminder, all three of our coaches are here at your disposal, as coaches that you can get one-on-one personalized coaching with. But as we wrap up, and before we go to final goodbyes, would love to hear from each of you. What is your final tip for someone on this call today? It can be about a specific component of the process. It can be just generally a mindset. Would love, Avi, I see you're unmuted, so Avi, we'll start with you, and then let's go Faisal and Emily.
Talk to 3 coaches, make the appointments with 3 coaches on Leland, talk to them. Something will occur to you that has not occurred to you yet.
Just going to go ahead and pass through so that you can see and scan to book with our coaches. Faisal.
Go beyond the brand. It's very easy to get caught up with the Harvard, Wharton, Stanford, the M7s, but reflecting back on my experience, those individuals that really took the time to establish fit with the school and which would be right for their career goals have had much more fulfilling careers. So I know it's hard, but look beyond the brand.
Love it. Emily, round us out.
I'm going to go super tactical and just say, when you've done all this hard work about thinking about your stories and your overall personal brand and what you want to tell them, and then you get to writing the essays, answer the prompt. I get so many first drafts that tell me all sorts of things that people really want to convey, and they don't answer the prompt. And I feel like that's just, I'm not going to say the kiss of death, but it shows you're not following instructions, and your attention to detail is lacking. So
Absolutely.
leave it there.
What incredible final tips. A huge thank you to our coaches. Make sure you send them some love in the chat. As a reminder, I think Elisa's just sent their profiles in the chat. You can scan the QR codes. No matter where you are in the process, if this is your first experience that you have engaging with what it'll take to apply to an MBA, or if you've already started that introspection process, they are here to help you and support you and to stand in your corner and cheer you on. We have some of the most phenomenal coaches on the platform. I already see some intro calls coming in for each of them. Make sure you book time with them before they fill up. They're in such high demand, but have really, really appreciated having the 3 of you on today. And best of luck to all of you on the call that are applying. We have our Women in MBA panel that'll start in here about just 10 minutes. So thank you, everyone. Hope everyone has a great rest of your evening. And again, huge thank you to our 3 coaches.
Thank you.
Thank you.